Set, Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss Dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
Welcome back into the Dynasty Nerds Podcast. Yes, Rich is gone. He's gone again. This is another vacation. I don't know how many vacations he gets a year, but apparently it's a lot. So we are missing him, but Matt and I are the duo this week. This is, I think, round 3 this summer for you and I.
This is round 3 of the Sweatfest for me and you. And again, of course, the temperatures had to peak out at about 88 degrees. So the back room, nice and sweaty. I wore my Las Vegas Raiders themed Dynasty Nerds t-shirt because, I mean, mine as well when in Rome, I guess, right? Like It's going to be 100 degrees back here. I might as well support the Vegas Raiders and my boy. What's his name? Gosh.
Wow. Yeah. You love him so much. My boy,
my boy,
Zamir White.
Zamir White.
Come on.
Thank you very
Matt.
much. It's hot back here. This is going to be a reoccurring theme, I think, for me today. I get slow and tired when it's hot, and here we are. So.
Well, and unfortunately for you, we're doing your favorite thing in the world, playing games this week. We have lots of fantasy football games to play, and I know how much you love those so dearly deep in your soul. So it sounds
somewhere
like the perfect time.
Deep in there, I do actually love these. I don't mind them. I'm just messing with you. There are things I'm better at in these, and
Sure.
we're going to see that today. And there's things that I'm worse at, and we're definitely going to see that today. So
Watch, you're gonna knock it out of the park, and everyone's gonna laugh, and it'll be great. All right. Before we get into that, though, let's talk about Prize Picks. Prize Picks, yeah, that's right. Promo code NERDS. I'll get that out of the way right off the top. Promo code NERDS. All right. Get in there. You will receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. You're saying, well, what do I want this promo code for? Well, it's for Prize Picks. It's the best way to get your player prop action. Guys, we are getting so close to the season. I can basically smell the preseason. I didn't know that the preseason had a scent, but I can smell it. I feel it right here in my nostrils. We are that close. You can go on there, pick 2 to 5 players, pick an over under on projections, whether it's passing yards, rushing yards, touchdowns, whatever you want, whatever tickles your fancy. That's what you can do over there on prizepicks.com. And of course, they have the amazing app. It takes 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. And also, we've been talking about it for a little bit, but if you go over there and you're in a state where you're able to use Prize Picks, I know not everyone's not able to necessarily, but are we still giving away shirts, Matt?
We're still giving away shirts, man. There should be a Google Sheet sign up type of thing here in the YouTube link, and probably in the podcast as well. And they just have to sign up. I think they have to show proof with an email, and we'll kind of verify what's going on there if they did actually make the bet or the whatever the prop, if you will.
Yeah.
And they'll get a t-shirt. And then are we still doing the grand prize type of thing, the team audit
show, the team audit? That's right. Yes. Summer's been tricky. We haven't gotten a ton of them out, but we have plenty on the horizon for those team audit shows. So if you want to get your team audited by the likes of the Dynasty Nerds podcast crew, we don't know who exactly, but it'll be somebody on the podcast. Go ahead and get in over there at prizepicks.com. Okay, let's get into these games. I love doing this. This is one of my favorite things to do. So we're going to start off with a game that I like to call the likely O-meter. All right.
The likely O-meter?
Yeah. It's catching on nationwide. It's a very snazzy name, very creative. So
as an Irish person with an O at the beginning of his name, I took offense to this game already.
It's being racist. All right.
It's okay. We can let it go. Let's move on.
I was nervous. Okay. So in this game here, I'm going to give you a statement, and you are going to tell me how likely you think this is to happen. So 1 being not likely at all. I don't see this happening no matter what. 10 being it's basically a lock. Write it down right now. Okay.
Yep.
Now, I don't necessarily believe or not believe any of these. These are just narratives.
So 10 means it's not going to happen at all, right? And one
opposite.
I'm messing with you. I'm messing with you. Let's move on.
Didn't even pick up on it. How bad it is. All right. Number 1, Lamar Jackson is not a top 10 quarterback this season with Hollywood Brown leaving for the Cardinals. How likely do you think that is to being true?
I mean, I'd love to say, from a Browns standpoint, that's a 10.
Yeah,
I mean,
happening for sure.
If he stays healthy with his rushing upside, even without Hollywood Brown there, I think, Rashad Bateman's going to step right into that. They got some other guys there that are also James Prochet. They're talking up a little bit, and obviously Devin Duvernay as well, that I think are capable guys that just kind of needed more of an opportunity. So while I do like Marquise Brown, I think he's a good player. I think they can kind of fill that void left behind there with a Bateman stepping up in his second year and some of those other guys kind of taking the next step forward. So in my likely-o-meter, it would be down in like the 3s or something like that. I think injury is probably the only way that he wouldn't. All the camp reports are that he's, he played last year at around 205. He's up near 220 now. And, so if you're to believe everything you read and hear, like he hasn't lost the explosiveness and all of that. And he's been also working on his throwing motion, which is, in my opinion, one of his biggest weaknesses. Sure. I think ever since he came out that he hasn't had what I would call a natural throwing motion. And sometimes the ball has a tendency to flutter on him. So if he can eliminate that kind of stuff out of his game, the occasional dead duck type of throw, he could be a much more potent offensive weapon. So Lamar Jackson not becoming a top 10 guy in the likely-o-meter, I'm going to put it at 3.
Yeah, I'm probably in the same kind of range there. For what it's worth, last year, quarterback 14, part of that was due to, missing the last few games with injury and things like that. Season before that, he was at exactly 10. So we've seen a couple down seasons in a row, but of course, before that, he was quarterback 1 overall. So I think it's a high likelihood. I don't know that I would say he's going to be top 5 again this year, but I don't think he's going to fall out of the top 10 either. So I would put it pretty low as well, probably at the same number. We'll say the same number for this first one here. We'll give it a 3. All right.
Okay.
Number 2, Breece Hall is an RB1 in his rookie season. Breece Hall is an RB1 in his rookie season. Where do you think that lands on the likely-o-meter?
I think he's probably the most likely rookie to end up as a running back 1. So I can see why you picked this guy. I think a lot of people are completely discarding and discounting Michael Carter. I don't know that that's in my thought process for year 1. I could see this being one of those things where, Breece Hall gets 70% of the carries or maybe 65 and Michael Carter's kind of picking up the slack everywhere else. Is that enough to get Breece Hall into the top 12 and make him a running back 1? I think he's going to be borderline. I don't see this as a slam dunk. So the likelihood that he does make it as a running back 1 in year 1, I'll put it maybe as a 4, because he does have a ton of upside in the passing game.
Sure.
So if they do use him quite a bit there and kind of make life easier on Wilson there, this, he could be a guy that benefits greatly from that. So they don't have I wouldn't call it anybody there an established tight end. They got CJ Uzama and
Michael Conklin.
Yes, thank you, Conklin. That just came over from the Vikings. It's not Michael. I just did it on the show last week, and I can't think of it. So we'll move on. Like we're not a bunch of bumbling idiots. And
Conklin. I'm feeling a little more optimistic.
So anyway, my number I think was, did I say 4?
You said 4. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
I'm going to put it at a 6. And not because I would say this is like a safe bet by any stretch of the imagination. But we've had very, very few seasons over the past decade where we have not had a rookie running back finish as an RB1. So in that narrative line, I could easily see this happening again. And I think he's the most likely candidate. I think he's the one in the line for the most touches overall. I like what they've done with their offensive line. I think it's a very good offensive line. And he's a guy that can break off long plays. And, it's tougher for guys that, are going to just be between the tackles grinders. But I think he's so much more than that. And he's truly a complete 3-down back. And you're right. Michael Carter is going to be the thing that would hinder this the most. I think, though, I still think it's going to be enough of Breece Hall and, not as much Carter that I'm going to put it slightly above average, and I'm going to give it a 6.
Okay. And if he does get in, I wouldn't expect him to be high end. I think he's going to be low
11, 12.
Back end.
Yep.
And to say, to put my number at 4, it's not to say that I don't think he can get there, or I don't think he's going to be right in that range regardless. I just don't know that he'll get all the way to 12. He might be 13, 14, 15. And I think, me, you, and Rich have nitpicked this in the past on other guys,
Sure.
like Joe Mixon and stuff like that. But the bottom line is that there's a number, there's a line in the sand, and it's 12.
Sure.
So I could see him much more likely to be 13, 14, 15 than actually get into 10, 11, 12. So
right. Makes sense. All right, let's go on to number 3. Josh Allen finishes as the QB1 for the 3rd straight season. How likely do we think that is to transpire?
Well, I mean, let's see. Stephon Diggs is there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Dawson Knox is still there from last year, so he hasn't lost anything from that respect. Jameston Crowder, I would expect to be the guy that kind of fills in that slot position that was vacated by
Cole
who was
Beasley.
there? Yeah, Cole Beasley
Emmanuel Sanders
and
before
Emmanuel Sanders
Yeah.
Last year, and I think he'll be fine in that position. I think he can at least fill the shoes of Cole Beasley. And obviously we haven't even discussed everyone's favorite fantasy darling, Gabe Davis, in this whole conversation. So the sky is really the limit here. Not to mention the fact that they have a pass catching running back now in James Cook that they picked up in the 2nd round to go along with the other running backs in their stable. So they keep adding weapons for him, and he keeps showing out. I do think that he absolutely has the potential to be the number 1 overall quarterback. So I'm going to say, especially with guys like Patrick Mahomes kind of losing his number 1 target and that kind of being up in the air, Justin Herbert is another guy that has a lot of potential to be that number 1 guy as well. But
Rodgers lost Adams, so that hurts his chances.
Right. So there are a lot of guys that, have lost some things. Obviously, Herbert's the guy that kind of maintain a lot of the same kind of people. He did lose James Cook, but I think the tight ends that they have on the roster are more than capable of kind of filling in what an old James Cook was able to, Jared Cook was able to do at the tight end position. So I think it's probably between those 2 guys for me. And I'll just take the guy that I know has done it, and I'll put that up in probably like a 7 as pretty likely.
Yeah, I'm with you, and maybe even a hair more. I was going to go with an 8 on this, and for some of the reasons that you laid out. But I think the biggest reason for me is they still did not draft that thumper at the goal line. And that's been one of the things that's really propelled Josh Allen is those rushing touchdowns. When they get into the goal line, they don't have that guy in the red zone that they feel confident at this point to be able to give him a lot of the touches inside the red zone. And because of that, they drafted, James Cook instead, who's only going to help Josh Allen, potentially get more passing yards. And I don't think he's going to be taking away a lot of rushing opportunities from Josh Allen. And so because of that, I think it's a very high likelihood that he ends up being the quarterback 1 overall again, which is tough to do year in, year out, but he's done it for 2 straight seasons. And I just don't see any good reason as to why he wouldn't do it again.
Yeah. I mean, especially with Gabe Davis. Who's obviously going to have like 3,000 yards this year.
Yeah. I mean, if every game is like the last game of the season, extrapolate that out, 4 touchdowns a game.
I can't even do that math. So we're not even
ridiculous.
Going to attempt it. Yeah.
Yeah. What would it be? 4 times 10, 40 times 4 times 28. So 68 touchdowns just to Gabe Davis alone.
No, just round up. It's 70.
Okay. It's 70. What's more impressive? 70 touchdowns for Gabe Davis or Dak Prescott throwing for 7,000 yards?
I think it's 70 touchdowns, but it's close.
That's close.
It really
All
is
right.
close. Yeah.
Number 4, both. Now, this is not an or. This is both of these guys have to do this. Okay.
This is
both,
an and equation, not an or equation.
That is correct.
All right.
Both Desmond Ridder and Malik Willis start 6 or more games in 2022.
Let's see. I mean, Desmond Ridder, I think, is an easier one to figure out, and you can definitely see the scenario there, right? I mean, I don't have either one of their bye weeks, in front of me, but I think regardless, Atlanta is not going to be a very good team unless Marcus Mariota really just picks him up, throws him on his back, and does stuff that we've never seen him do. So it would be a very unexpected kind of turn of events if we don't see Desmond Ridder at some point in this season, and probably sooner rather than later. Once they get out of contention, I could see them turning that over, see what they have in the 3rd round guy. The other one is a little bit more tricky because I feel like Tennessee is a better team and could probably they're probably more set up for playoff hopes. So, if we're looking at just Ridder, I'd say that's probably 8 or 9. But looking at both of them, I mean, I think it would take an injury to Henry and just super inefficiency out of Ryan Tannehill to get that done. So I'm going to drop this thing way down and probably have that be like I'm going to say a 4 that we see both of them do 6 games, because I think it's less than 50-50. It's less than, I guess, a coin toss up type of thing, just because I do think Tennessee's going to attempt to be good this year.
Yeah, I could easily see that being the scenario. We're back to where we were before with a 4 and 6. I put it at a slightly over 50% chance, and I'm with you. Desmond Ridder, I think that's a lock. I would be absolutely shocked if he doesn't start 6 or more games this season. But Willis is the really tricky one. I do wonder now, though, is this the beginning of the rebuild for the Tennessee Titans? And that's why I get a little bit more confidence. We see Derrick Henry now at this age where we don't see many running backs have a ton of success. He's obviously a freak of nature, but he is coming off a fairly significant injury of his own. And Ryan Tannehill looked pretty rough last year. And they traded their, I guess you could say Henry's their best offensive weapon, but their best wide receiver and a young star in AJ Brown. And they bring in Treylon Burks. Not that I think Treylon Burks is terrible, but regardless, most wide receivers in their rookie year aren't Chase and Jefferson. Most guys take a few years to really develop, especially if they're being counted on to be the top guy right away. And as much as I love Robert Woods, and I think he's going to be a good addition to this offense, I don't know that there's enough here to really propel them ahead of a team in their own division like the Colts. I think the Colts are much more set up for success than the Titans are this season. So we'll have to see how all of this plays out. But right now, I'm going to give it a 6-4 overall. I think that we do by the end of the year see them turn the reins over to Malik Willis and see what they have there.
I mean, I don't doubt by the end of the year. I'm just not sure if he's going to get just 6 games.
Get to
what I mean?
Yep.
It might be that last 3 or 4 games when they know they're out of it. And at that point, it's you might as well at that point, right? I mean, what are you sticking around for with the older guy? You want to see what you got out of this young guy. So 6 is a very tricky number for me. So I think you picked a good number there, and you made it tough on us. But I'm going 4. You're going 6. Let's hear the next one.
All right, the next one. Michael Pittman Jr. is a wide receiver 1 this season. Michael Pittman Jr. with his new quarterback, old quarterback that's new for him. It's kind of like when you get a used car, like you're excited about it, but it's like it's not a new car, it's a used car. That's Matt Ryan. So it's new to him. Old overall. Yeah, what do you think? Likely meter of him being a wide receiver 1 this season.
Trying to pull up his stats real fast. So he had 88 receptions last year, just cleared 1,000 yards with 1,082 and 6 touchdowns on 129 targets. If he can do that with Carson Wentz, throwing him the football, I think Matt Ryan is a more wide receiver friendly quarterback. How about that? Especially with big targets like that. I think Matt Ryan's always kind of excelled with those kind of guys, either the tight ends or the Julio Jones type of guys. So I think he's going to know how to use Michael Pittman, both in the red zone and just kind of out in the open where you can throw balls up and have Michael Pittman go get them. It's a big leap though, from 21 all the way up to 12. And that's right around where Pittman finished last year in PPR. It would take some work, a lot of those guys. I mean, I could see obviously Hunter Renfrow was in the wide receiver 1 realm last year. Chris Godwin was in the wide receiver 1 realm. Both those guys I could see having a fall out of that category. Obviously Godwin because of injuries. And Renfrow because he's not going to be getting as many targets as he was last year. So there's room for people to get up. I'm not sure if Pittman is the guy to do it. So I'm going to give that probably I want to say 7, but it's probably closer to 6, but I'm going to go 7. Maybe I do like it a little bit more than I'm letting on.
Yeah, no, I thought you were going to go significantly lower than that. That was a number I had down as well. I had a 7 for Michael Pittman Jr. Completing that milestone. And part of it is his talent. I believe in the talent we saw specifically the first half of the season when the offense was really humming. I mean, Michael Pittman Jr. was winning you weeks early on. Then that entire offense kind of collapsed in on itself over those last 5 weeks. And that's when we saw Michael Pittman Jr. as part of that really downturn in his numbers and his production. But I love the player. Once again, there's really not a huge target battle. They do bring in Alec Pierce, who I think is a good, talented player. But I think we're going to be seeing, him making big plays, but not necessarily consistent targets. Paris Campbell, potentially, if he can ever stay healthy and get on the field. I feel like we've been saying this forever.
For the past 3 years, at least.
Yes. So who knows with all of those guys, but Michael Pittman is the constant. He's the consistent. He stays healthy. I think there's just a lot of things. And then Matt Ryan's the cherry on top. When you can get a guy that's as accurate as he is, I think that really puts it over the top. So I'm not expecting top 5 numbers, but I think he could slip into that 10 to 12 range at wide receiver this year, especially if there's better efficiency in the red zone. He's a guy that I could easily see having more than 6 touchdowns in the red zone. He boosts that to 8 or 9. Now we're really talking about an opportunity for him to be in that wide receiver 1 range.
And just for reference, Michael Pittman was wide receiver 11 weeks 1 through 8 last year. So that was kind of the early season stuff that you were talking about. And he was right there on the border. He was in the wide receiver 1 conversation during that span, and then it kind of fell off. So
yeah,
he could do it. He can do it.
You can do it. All right. Well, let's talk about another wide receiver here. Another young wide receiver. CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb finishes as a top 3 receiver in fantasy points in 2022. How likely is that to happen, Matt?
I mean, for my own good, I would love to say it's a 10. It's a 10. I'm trying to quickly pull up vacated targets.
10, I see.
Actually, I could just probably look directly at Amari Cooper's stats from last year, to kind of find out what extra we can expect out of a guy like CeeDee Lamb.
While you're looking for that, though, I'm going to give my number, and it's going to seem lower than I want it to be, but it's just to project any receiver with how big the player pool is and how much talent there is at wide receiver. It's tough to give any wide receiver more than a 5 or 6 as a possibility for that. Like that's about as high as I could feel about any possible receiver doing that. However, we know that Dak Prescott is going to absolutely sling the ball. We have no questions about that.
None at all. 7,000
yards. I mean, come on, guys. Same offense, same offensive coordinator. And we lost Amari Cooper. Michael Gallup is coming off of injury. And even James Washington has been banged up in camp. So it's basically CeeDee Lamb and Jalen Tolbert probably, who, is a good player, a third-round pick for the Cowboys. So I don't want to take anything away from him. But if you're Dak Prescott, especially earlier in the season, I'm looking for CeeDee Lamb. And then if CeeDee Lamb's not open, then I'm looking for Dalton Schultz. And that's going to be where 90% of my focus is in the passing game, is on those two guys. So I think the opportunity is there. And I think we could really see him step up in this third year into that alpha role. There were a lot of similarities between him and Davante Adams. We comped them a lot in the process. And that was kind of what we saw for Davante Adams. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb had a quicker start, but that third year was where we really saw Davante Adams propel into being that, like, oh, dang, he's really good. I think that's what we could see for CD this year. All of that being said, though, like I said, the highest I could feel for any receiver would be like a 5 or 6. So I'm only going to give this like a 2. And it sounds like I hate him and I don't think he can do it. I'm not saying that at all. It's just such a hard spot to get top 3. But I think he's as likely as the top 5, 6, 7 guys there. I don't see him falling outside of the top 10 receivers this year. And I think he's going to be closer to 5 than he is 10. 3 is just a really tough spot to get.
It really is. And it'd be quite a jump. He was wide receiver 15 last year. And Amari only had 103 targets for like 865 yards. So it's not like he wasn't already getting a lot last year. But I do think there's you've laid out all the points for an argument for him to go up and be a bona fide wide receiver 1, probably even a top 10 type of guy easily. Maybe even top 7 or 8. But like you said, top 3 it's rarefied air. I mean, Cooper Kupp was miles ahead of Deebo Samuel, who was the number 3 guy last year, like over 100 points. So, Cooper Kupp was locked in 412 points, and number 3 was Deebo Samuel at 310, with Davante Adams at 332 last year. So could Davante Adams changing from Green Bay to Oakland bump him out of the top 3? Absolutely. So I could see him going down a few notches. Deebo Samuel, if he's healthy, he's going to be in that conversation for sure. Cooper Kupp is going to be in that conversation for sure, just based off of volume and how much him and Matt Stafford kind of click. So then you're looking at guys like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, who switched teams and could find himself tumbling down this list a bit as well. So those are the type of guys he's going to have to kind of scrap and fight with to get up there. Mm-hmm. Can he do it? I think he's definitely skilled enough. So where you say 5 or 6 is maybe the top you can give, I'm gonna give him a 4. I'm gonna give him right. better than your 2, because I think he's
on my 2.
Ding. Yes, I'm chewing tonight. So yeah, CeeDee Lamb definitely has the skills. He's going to get a bump, somewhat of a bump in targets. So sky's the limit for this dude. I'm ready for him to take off.
All right, the aforementioned, I forget his name, Zamir White. Let's talk about him real quick.
Zeus. That's what I was trying to call him. I wanted to call him Zeus, and I couldn't think of Zamir.
There you go. Zamir White takes over for Josh Jacobs by the end of the season. So not right away, but we're talking weeks 14, 15, 16. We see that 50-50 split edge a little bit on the Zamir White side. How likely is that to happen?
So the one thing that when I think about all this kind of stuff, and I have thought about it, Zamir White's got the top end speed that Josh Jacobs just never has, right? He's going to be able to break off some plays. He's going to be able to do some things in the open field if he breaks one that you're just not going to see out of Josh Jacobs. They're both big physical guys. They're both bangers between the tackles. So for me, I think it's just a matter of time. And I think this is a 10. This is locked in. By the end of the year, Zamir White is going to be taking more snaps than Josh Jacobs. And it's a contract thing as well. They, you know what I mean? They know this is Josh Jacobs' last year of his deal. They didn't even attempt to get his 5th year on him. So I think the writing is on the wall for Josh Jacobs there with this new regime in Las Vegas. They have their new guy. I've been treating him as such. I do feel confidently. I love the guy's tape. And the combine numbers just they back up what I saw visually out of the guy.
Sure.
He is a big, strong guy, and he was running away from SEC defenders last year. And I think he's going to be able to do some of the similar stuff in the NFL. And once he does show that potential to go along with some of the other weapons that they have there, it's just going to be fire, and they're not going to be able to stop it. And it's going to be burning down the house, man.
Man, I need to stop doing Zamir White discussions with you, because as the guy that really wants to be the Zamir White truther and the forefront conductor of the hype train, you keep like edging me out. And so I need to stop discussing him with you and just discuss him with other people where I know I can be ahead of them.
Yeah, that's fair.
I can't put a 10 on it as much as I want to. I think the biggest things that this will come down to, as much as I think the talent is absolutely there, I believe in the player. I think the biggest thing this comes down to is, where are the Raiders at as far as the playoffs go? I think that's going to be a big factor in all of this, because obviously they're a team that is preparing to be a playoff team. They added Devontae Adams. They added a couple pieces on defense as well, some big name guys. But this, on the flip side, the division that they are in, they could end up being the fourth team in that division. I mean, that's how good that division is with the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Broncos, like everyone. It's going to be a fun division to watch.
Hey, listen, we've been talking a lot about Derek Carr and how much we liked him for years. He's the fourth best quarterback in that division.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, fourth. And it's not even really debatable. I mean, come on.
It's really not.
The
closest one he's to is maybe like Russ. And we're talking about a guy that's been like a top 8 quarterback every year.
Right.
So sorry, Derek. Sorry, buddy.
Until he proves it, that's where he's at. You know what I mean? And all those other guys, I think, have flashed either so much upside as young guys, or have been so far and done so much in the NFL that Derek hasn't. So it's
correct.
It's him at the last, and that hurts a little bit to say, but it is true. I think
it is true, because I love Derek Carr and I have him on many, many teams. All of that being said, I do think that they are competing for a playoff spot up to the bitter end. So because of that, I do think that they're going to lean on the veteran a little bit more than they lean on the rookie. So I'm only going to put it at like a 4 to 5 range. I know.
No faith. Faith this guy has.
I thought this was like a really hot take. And I was going to be like, I think it's just as likely to happen as not. And then you're like, 10 for sure.
10.
Mark it down. So yeah, I'm the one.
You're not gonna get a lot of slam dunks out of me. That's a slam dunk for me. I love it.
Oh man. Okay. Let's do a couple more here before we get to our second game. But Ramondre Stevenson outscores Damien Harris this season. How likely is that to happen in the Patriots backfield?
So obviously, there's a lot that goes into that, right? I mean, it's they have 2 rookies, but Ramondre Stevenson might end up getting this pass catching role. He's at least been talking about, increasing his pass game chops here in the offseason. Damien Harris, I think they pigeonholed him. He's basically the between the tackles guy. I mean, he's not a pass catching threat really that much. No. So if he does win that job, and if he can score some touchdowns and take away some rushing opportunities, which I think he's talented enough to do all of those things, he could win this. That being said, Bill Belichick is nearly impossible to figure out exactly how he's going to deploy people.
That's correct.
And we don't even have historical data at this point, I feel like, to lean on that much. Like Josh McDaniels is gone. They don't have what any of us would call a bona fide offensive coordinator right now. It's a bunch of defensive guys and special teams guys working as the de facto offensive coordinator there. So I honestly have no idea what to expect here out of the Patriots offense as a whole, but especially how they're going to divide up backfield touches. I mean, good luck even figuring out week to week, let alone over the course of an entire year. So I'm going to put it right at a 5 because I've got no idea. How about that? No idea.
That's 100% fair. I am really starting to get the feeling, and this is not based on numbers. This is more my gut feeling. So take that for what it's worth. But I'm starting to get the feeling that they are not overly impressed with Damien Harris. I think he's viewed just as a guy. He's a fine cog in their offensive system, but I think that they see the size and the skill set of Ramondre Stevenson. And I think that's what makes him so appealing, because remember, Damien Harris was more or less redshirted his rookie season.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas Ramondre Stevenson is now coming in and cutting into the touches of the starting running back. So very different ways that they were perceived early on in their careers. So I think we're only going to see better things in year 2. And you mentioned the receiving game. That's the kicker. If you can even pencil in 40 to 45 receptions for him this year, that's huge for a guy that could also be getting you a ton of rushing yards and work on the ground. So I'm going to put it more at like a 7.5. I feel pretty strongly at this point that he is going to eclipse Damien Harris.
How about this? I'm going to put a little bow on the top of it. If this was another team other than New England, I think it would be closer to a 7 or 8.
Sure.
But I honestly, to circle back to my other point, I just have no idea what they're going to do week to week. And I have no faith that they're going to say, hey, this guy right here. He's more talented. He can do more things in the offense, and he's a better player. So we're gonna play him more. I just don't think they don't like think like that. They think this week, how can I match up best on this team? Is it this player or this player? I know this player does X, Y, and Z really good, and that will exploit these things on the defense. So I'm gonna go with this guy. Next week, it could be somebody completely different. The weekend after that, it could be one of their other 2 running backs that they drafted this year. You know what I mean? Like Kevin Harris.
All of a sudden, JJ Taylor's a thing. Like what?
Yeah, exactly. And White, it sounds like, isn't close to being ready. It sounds like he's on good. It sounds like he's still walking with a limp, pronounced limp of sorts. So who knows what to expect out of that guy? I would think, at his age, he's got to be close to 30. That he might be one. It might be one of those things where he doesn't know he's done, but he's done.
Yeah, nope, I could see that, and that only helps potentially Ramondre Stevenson if he can gain that role. All right, last one here. TJ Hawkinson is a top 3 fantasy tight end this season. How likely is that to happen, Matt O'Hara?
I would like to. I mean, I think I like the talent. I think the more and more Hawkinson's around, I think the more and more other people like him more than I do. Like sure. I came in, you know what I mean? He came in and I really did like him. I thought he was the best tight end coming out the year that he was there. But every season he kind of has underwhelmed me from like where I expect him to finish, the targets I expect him to get. Last year, he only had 83 targets overall in an offense that didn't have a ton of weapons anyway. I think he did miss some games. So that's he missed 1, 2, 3, 4 at the end. So that was only, over a 12 game span. Or he missed 5 at the end. So, I mean, he's got room to go. He was tight end 13 despite missing the last 4 or 5 games. So he obviously has potential to be up there.
Sure.
Top 3, I think you've got to be looking at closer to. Let me see how Mark Andrews had 150 targets. Travis Kelce had 135 targets. George Kittle last year had only 95 targets. But managed to squeak his way up in the one that I'm looking at here. And then Dalton Schultz was closer to 100, I think, as well, 104. And he was number 4. So to get up in there, I think he's going to have to probably increase his target share a little bit and become more of a threat in the red zone. He's in 2020, he had 6 touchdowns. Last year, only 4. If he can get to that 10, I think that would be the way that he would get there. Because I'm not sure he's ever going to get 115, 120, 135 targets. I just
Sure.
don't think he's that kind of player. And the guys around him, with St. Brown now, probably going to be getting more and more targets. And obviously Jameson Williams are also
Right.
there. My boy DJ Chark is there.
Hey,
So I think there's just more talent around him this year. And DeAndre Swift's obviously nothing to sneeze at in the passing game as well. So that's kind of like who he's fighting with targets in order to get there. So I'm going to put it pretty low. I'm going to put it probably 4 that he gets, or 3 that he gets up into the top 3.
Yeah. I am going to say a 1.
Okay.
And that sounds so mean, but I think he is a very talented player overall, but I just don't think that there's that upside in this offense. And I don't think he's that big play guy either. We see some of these other tight ends, Kyle Pitts and Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce. Like, these guys are able to make things happen after the catch. I don't know that Hawkinson's able to do as much after the catch as some of these players. I don't think he's going to get the targets. And it's just not a conducive offense for this at this point. So I think him becoming a top 3 tight end this year is a near impossibility. Especially with Jared Goff at quarterback.
Yeah, I agree with that. From a physical standpoint, is there? I mean, I think he's a little bit better of an athlete than like a Dalton Schultz.
Sure,
but not like a ton. It's not like a huge gap. You know what I mean?
Right.
But between
he
him
had
and
good numbers at the combine, not quite as good as his counterpoint Noah Fant, but he had good numbers at the combine. But me remembering watching back, he was good in the open field, but he wasn't special. He doesn't have this elite speed, or, he's not trucking dudes like Gronk used to, or,
Right.
He's not doing anything to like separate himself there. And if he's not going to get the, you mentioned the target numbers, if he's not getting 110, 115 plus targets, I just don't see any world where that ends up as a possibility. And then the touchdown numbers, I just don't see that being likely. So I'm going to put it at a 1. I think it is nearly impossible for him to be a tight end 1 this season, as much as I would like to see it.
You mean
All
tight
right.
end 3 overall?
Sorry,
right?
tight end 3.
Top
3.
Top 3.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think he'll be a tight end 1. Like in the tight end 1.
I think he will also.
Yes. Yep. All right. Before we get to our second game, let's talk about FFPC. Launched in 2010, FFPC is the home of the largest high-stake dynasty leagues in the community of fantasy footballers. Over 1,000 active leagues. You can have, we say high stakes, but they have $77 leagues. And with our promo code nerds, you get $35 off. That's almost half off of your entry. So it's very affordable. But if you're like, look, I actually do want to be a baller, I actually do want to do some legitimate high stakes, we can get $2,500 teams. We can get some real baller action up in here.
2,500.
2,500.
2,500.
But they have never had a league fold. It just hasn't happened. And that's, I think, the thing about FFPC that is just so encouraging is you put together this awesome dynasty team. And you're like, I'm so excited about it. And then 2 years later, the dude that traded all his draft picks, everybody's ticked at him and he didn't pay his entry fee. But you don't have to worry about that with FFPC.
Mm-mm.
It's safe as they come. Go to myffpc.com, use promo code nerds on the payment page. And like I said before, $35 off any new FFPC startup registration. Okay, let's get into our second game here, Matt. And I'm calling this one Top Fives. Okay.
Top 5s.
So
I'm
what
calling
this is,
Matt's going to fail. Let's go.
I'm going to give you a category. Some are more traditional categories. Some are less traditional categories. And I want you to guess as many of the players that were in the top 5 of that category as you can. We'll give you 3 misses. Once you get to 3, I'm just going to read off the list. All right.
Thank God. I need a safety net on these.
All right.
This is not my strong suit. So this is going to go either really well or really poorly. So
you're going to do great, Matt. We'll start with an easier one. Okay.
All right. Yep.
Leaders in passing yards in 2021.
I mean,
Top
obviously
5.
Obviously, Dak with 7,000 was on the list.
That was the year before.
Oh, dang it. You're right. He was, dang it.
Yeah.
All right. So passing yards, Tom Brady. Was Tom Brady on there?
Tom Brady's number one.
Aaron Rodgers.
Rodgers did not make the top 5.
All right.
He won MVP. You would think he would have.
Yeah, I thought he would have as well. I thought that was a slam dunk of all slam dunks. So I've got one so far and one strike.
One. Yep, one of each.
One good one strike.
2,000.
We're not counting the Dak because
No,
obviously that was a joke.
That was a joke. A joke.
Clearly a joke.
Unless it was right.
Unless it was right, and then I would have gone for it. Was no. I'm just going through the lists in my brain here. See, this is why I'm bad at these kinds of things. Josh Allen, was he on the list?
Josh Allen was not on the list, surprisingly.
So that's two
strikes to one.
At least you said surprisingly. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, you picked 2 players that I think 90% of people would have picked, like Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, 2 of the best quarterbacks in the league, slinging it out there. Like you would have guessed that, but no, neither one made the top 5.
Patrick Mahomes. Was Mahomes
Correct.
On there? Thank God. Herbert. Was Herbert on there?
That is correct. So you got 3 of the 5.
Oh, Stafford had to have been on there.
Stafford was on there. You got 4 of the 5. Look at you. Can you get all 5? And these are the top 4 that you've gotten. So can you get the guy that came in at number 5? I'll give you a slight hint. He's not as obvious as the other 4.
Perfect. Thanks.
I'll give you a second. Do you want a second?
Was it Drew Brees? No, I'm just.
Was it Drew Brees?
That's not obvious at all. No, go ahead. Go.
You want a second?
What's your second? I do want a second hit. I'd love
okay,
because your other one was sucked. Just
all right.
To be frank,
he was in the same division with at least one of these guys.
Now I've got to remember who I've already done.
You have already said Tom Brady, Justin Herbert, Matthew Stafford, and Patrick Mahomes.
Give it to me. This is dead air, man.
Derek Carr. Derek Carr came in.
No way.
Yep.
I would have guessed 15 other players before I got to Derek Carr.
He was the surprising one in there. Derek Carr surprisingly was a top 5 passer in as far as yardage goes. All right, let's go over to the running back position. Red zone rushing attempts. Can you guess the top 5 in red zone rushing attempts? There is one guy that was far and away more than everybody else, and then there's like the other 4.
Okay, so red zone rushing attempts.
Total red zone rushing attempts.
It's not a percentage type of thing.
Nope.
It is total.
Whole numbers.
Jonathan Taylor.
Number 1 far and away. He had 89 red zone rushing attempts last year.
Holy crap.
Right?
I'm just going to go Najee Harris because he just had so many rushing attempts.
He is not. This is a tough one. The other 4 guys, honestly, I might have gotten one.
Okay.
It's a weird list.
All right. Then I'm going to go weird.
Get weird.
Cordell Patterson.
Cordell Patterson is a good guess, but no, he was not.
Dang it. James Conner.
I would have guessed that as well, but he is not. The other 4 on the list here. So Jonathan Taylor with 89. Second place, Austin Eckler.
I was going to guess him, but I thought there was no freaking way.
Right?
Oh,
right?
Man. Eckler. Okay.
Which definitely tells me there's some regression due there.
Yeah, there's probably some regression. He had the most rushing yards that he's ever had. He also last year, like 900 or something. So that's why I was going to guess it. Dang it. All right, go ahead.
Antonio Gibson came in 3rd, which is good news, but it's also like you had an okay season and you had that many red zone rushing attempts.
I was actually just about to look up how many, and he only scored 7 touchdowns. It's not like he only scored 7 touchdowns. He had 11 the previous year, so he already regressed a little bit.
Now Brian Robinson is in the fold, and also of those main guys, he also had the lowest yards per carry inside the red zone at only 1.7 compared to other guys that were in the 2 to 3 yard range.
Yuck. Okay.
Damien Harris came in 4th with 46. And then the shocker of all shockers, I could have gotten 50 guesses and I would not have gotten this right. Sony Michel with 46 last year.
No,
the LA Rams.
Did he score any touchdowns on them?
He actually had a few. But I was
I'll take your word for it.
I was shooketh.
Yeah, I never would have guessed Sony Michel. So we could have been here all night and I would have been going all around that circle. The whole time. Oh, he did score 4 touchdowns last year.
He had some, not a lot.
Yeah.
He had some.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to let's stay at the running back room. Let's go to running back receptions. Who were the top 5 leaders in receptions at the running back position?
Okay.
I think
Austin
4
Eckler.
of the 5 are not too bad. Eckler is correct. He was second with 70.
Man, I'm trying to think if
you guessed this player for the red zone list, the guy that's at number 1.
I did, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Cordell Patterson, right?
No, he came in 6th. He came in 6th.
Okay. I mean, I already said Eckler, right?
You already said Eckler. You got him.
Because I apparently have the memory of a fish when it comes to contests.
Double checking, clarifying.
Did Leonard Fournette do it?
Uncle Lenny did. So he was 3rd with 69.
I can't not laugh at that.
Yeah, Rich would expect us to laugh.
Yeah. I mean, Alvin Kamara, right?
Alvin Kamara did not get on this list. It was his lowest reception total season of his career. So that's 2 wrong and 2 right.
All right. I'm trying to think of who I guessed. Dalvin Cook. Was Dalvin Cook on the list?
Dalvin Cook is not on the list. So number 1, Najee Harris.
No way.
He led the NFL running backs in receptions last season with 74. Austin Eckler was 70. Uncle Lenny was 69. DeAndre Swift was 62. And then the one that was surprising to me.
How did I forget Swift? Swift? Come on.
The one that was surprising to me, number 5, Josh Jacobs.
Oh,
I would not have guessed that one. 54 receptions last year. I think part of that was due to Kenyon Drake going down. So I think they ended up using him more on 3rd downs than they did before. But we got a couple more here that we'll get into, and then we'll get out of here for the night. Wide receiver targets. Who were the top 5 players in wide receiver targets? Not receptions, targets.
Not receptions, just targets.
As Matt's looking up the numbers right now.
I just like a list of players in front of me because that's what I struggle with most. Obviously, Cooper Kupp is a guy that
Cooper Kupp number 1, 191.
Bagazillion.
Yes.
Targets. I mean, I got to throw my guy Justin Jefferson in there. Was he in that list?
He was number 4. This is the easiest list, I would say, of all of them, with the exception of one player. Yes, Justin Jefferson was 4th with 167.
Devontae Adams is up there, right?
He was 3rd, 169.
I want to say Stephon Diggs.
Stephon Diggs. So you've got the 4 that I think were fairly easy. He came in 5th. The guy that came in or tied for 2nd with Devontae Adams is the only one you're missing. And this was the one that kind of surprised me in this group.
Was it Deontay Johnson?
It was Deandre Johnson. 5 for 5. Look at you.
Dude, Big Ben had like that quick 2-second release for the year. Not even. Yeah. I mean, it was like under 2 seconds, and Deontay Johnson was just raking all last year.
He was. So they had the leader, the 2nd most targets at a receiver and the most at a running back position. So Big Ben was throwing it short.
I can't believe I didn't miss any on that. That was amazing.
That was really impressive, Matt. I'm so impressed with you right now. I want to give you a trophy of some sort for the perfect guess.
Just next time you see me is a high five. That's all I need.
That'll work.
Yeah.
All right.
That's all I need.
Do you want to go with the more weird one or the more traditional one? We got 2 left.
Oh, dude, let's go weird. I'm always down for weird.
Let's go weird. All right. Running back quality starts. So these are starts with 10.4 points or better. And this is for what it's worth.
PPR fantasy.
It was actually standard. This was
Okay.
according to Fantasy Pros. This is how they did it for some reason. So guys that had 10.4 points or more, how many games did they do that?
So what's the question? Top 5? Is that what
Top
you're saying?
5
Okay.
of guys that had 10.4 points or more, basically.
I mean, you can obviously say Jonathan Taylor, right?
Jonathan Taylor had 14 games last year of 10.4 or more points.
Okay. Austin Eckler was probably in that range as well.
Correct.
These are,
That was number 1 and number 2. Both had 14. So they were very consistent.
And Najee Harris, I would think just off of all those targets and all those rushing attempts would be in that list.
Had 13. So he was third. You're going down the list. Can you get another perfect one, Matt?
I don't even have a list of the guys in front of me right now. Let me pull up some of those guys. Maybe pull out some of these other. Was Zeke on that list?
Zeke was not on that list. No more perfects for you.
No more perfects. That's okay. James Conner was pretty reliable last year.
James Conner tied for 4th with 10. There was
Awesome.
one other player that also had 10 games of 10.4 or more.
Is it our boy Nick Chubb?
Was not our boy Nick Chubb.
I just wanted to guess him.
I know the injury made it more difficult for him.
Was it playoff Lenny?
It was not playoff Lenny. It was Alvin Kamara. He had his highest rushing total season of his career, and that's what boosted him there. Last category before we get out of here: quarterback rushing touchdowns. Top 5 in quarterback rushing touchdowns.
Okay, rushing touchdowns from the quarterback position. I'm going to go, Josh Allen layup, right?
Yep, he was 3rd with 6.
Okay. Oh, it's 3rd, huh? Good
Number
Lord.
1, 3, and 4 are pretty easy. 2 and 5 are not as easy.
I know Lamar. How much did Lamar miss last year?
Lamar missed, I believe, 4 games.
Then he should be on that list somewhere, right?
You would have thought, but no, he was not
Dang.
one of the top 5 in rushing touchdowns. I believe he was in yards, but I don't believe he was in touchdowns.
Sam Darnold had a weird year last year.
Sam Darnold is one of them. Yes.
Yes.
He came in 5th with 5 rushing touchdowns.
He scored like a rushing touchdown like every week, for
The first 3 or 4 weeks. Yep.
I remember that now. I knew that was okay. All right.
All right, you got one of the weird ones.
That's it. Let's just end on a high note.
We're going home.
Shiitake.
There's 2 pretty easy ones you haven't guessed yet, I think.
Did Herbert score a lot?
Herbert did not get in the top 5.
Okay.
He did get rushing touchdowns. I believe he got 3 or 4, but he did not get in the top 5.
Did Tom Brady get his cheapies?
He did not this time.
All right.
So Jalen Hurts led the way with 9.
Dang it. He was like the first person that popped in my mind. I cycled through so many other ones that I forgot about it.
You forgot to go back to him.
Yeah.
The other surprising one, number 2, Ryan Tannehill with 7 rushing touchdowns last year.
Interesting. I
He
don't
always
think
does
I've
the
ever picked
finger
up on that. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
And
Jordan
then
finger.
Josh Allen was 3rd. Kyler Murray was 4th.
Ah,
And then Sam Darnold was 5th.
those should have been both layups. I was overthinking this one for sure.
You were thinking
The Sam Darnold thing got me like way off track.
It
and
did. It was so
I could
good.
I could never recover. So it's all good.
All right. Well, that's it for our free show, but return for the Nerd Herd show. We are going to be doing more amazing games, and we're going to be putting Matt under the microscope, giving him all this pressure. Although, Matt, I think you performed pretty well, all things considered.
Thank you. I appreciate that boost in confidence. I'm going to need it going into this next show. So.
All right. Well, make sure that you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. All kinds of stuff going out on the YouTube. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at Dynasty Nerds, and join our Dynasty Nerds Facebook group. We have like 13,000, 14,000 some members. If you're part of the Nerd Herd, make sure that you are in the Discord. We are always doing fun things in the Discord. There are so many different ways to connect with us. Just make sure that you just give us that cup of coffee a month, and you can be part of the greatest community inside Dynasty Fantasy Football. That is all I have. Matt, we'll see you soon.
Adios.